You're a Navy SEAL commander in the middle of a firefight in Iraq. Chaos everywhere. Your team is taking heavy fire. And then, your own forces start shooting at each other. Blue on blue. Friendly fire. In that moment of absolute catastrophe, what would you do? Blame the fog of war? Point fingers at poor communication? Curse the impossible circumstances? Navy SEAL Commander Jocko Willink did something completely different. Something that would revolutionize not just military leadership, but transform how we think about responsibility in business, relationships, and life itself. He looked in the mirror and said two simple words that changed everything. I failed. Welcome to the most powerful leadership principle you'll ever learn. It's called extreme ownership, and by the end of this hour together, you'll understand why taking complete responsibility for everything in your world, yes, everything, is the secret weapon that separates true leaders from everyone else. I'm going to share with you the battle-tested strategies that helped Navy SEALs win the most dangerous missions on Earth. And more importantly, I'll show you exactly how to apply these same principles to conquer your own battles. Whether you're leading a team at work, running a business, or simply trying to take control of your own life. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin weren't just any Navy SEALs. They led Task Unit Bruiser, the most highly decorated special operations unit of the Iraq War. When they came home, they founded Echelon Front and began teaching Fortune 500 companies the same principles that kept their teams alive and mission successful in Ramadi, one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Here's what you're going to learn in the next hour. First, we'll dive deep into the core concept of extreme ownership, why taking complete responsibility is actually the ultimate form of power, not weakness. You'll discover the shocking truth about blame and how it's been sabotaging your success. Then, we'll explore the 4 pillars that support everything great leaders do. How to build trust that's bulletproof, how to prioritize when everything seems critical, how to plan like a military strategist, and how to execute with the precision of a special operations team. Finally, we'll talk about leading up and down, managing your boss just as effectively as you manage your team, and creating a culture where everyone takes ownership. This isn't just about becoming a better leader. This is about becoming the kind of person who gets results, who people follow naturally, who turns obstacles into opportunities. Ready to take ownership of your life? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Power of Extreme Ownership. Let me start with the story that changed everything for Jocko Willink. It was 2006, and Jocko's SEAL team was conducting a complex operation in Ramadi. Multiple units, Iraqi soldiers, U.S. Army troops, a massive coordinated assault. But something went horribly wrong. In the chaos and confusion, American forces began engaging each other. Friendly fire. When the smoke cleared, one Iraqi soldier was dead, and several others were wounded, shot by their own allies. It was every commander's worst nightmare. Back at base, the investigation began. The Army pointed fingers at the SEALs. The SEALs pointed fingers at the Army. The Iraqi forces were blamed for poor communication. Everyone had a reason why it wasn't their fault. Everyone except Jocko. When Jocko stood up in that room full of senior officers, he didn't make excuses. He didn't shift blame. He said the words that would define his entire leadership philosophy. There is only one person to blame for this, and that's me. I am the commander. I am responsible for the entire operation. As the senior man, I take complete, full ownership of this tragedy. The room went silent. Here was a decorated Navy SEAL commander taking responsibility for something that, technically, wasn't directly his fault. But Jocko understood something that most people never figure out. When you take extreme ownership, you take extreme control. Think about it. When you blame others, you give away your power. You're essentially saying, I can't succeed because of them. But when you take ownership, complete ownership, you're saying, I have the power to fix this, to prevent it from happening again, to control the outcome. This is the opposite of what most people do. Most people are professional blame shifters. The project failed because marketing didn't give us enough budget. Sales are down because the economy is bad. The team isn't performing because they're not motivated. Sound familiar? But here's what Jocko learned. Every excuse is a missed opportunity to get better. When Jocko took ownership of that friendly fire incident, something amazing happened. Instead of wasting time pointing fingers, His entire team focused on solutions. They redesigned their communication protocols. They improved their coordination procedures. They made sure it would never happen again. And you know what? It never did. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds great for Navy SEALs, but how does this apply to my life? Let me give you some examples. Sarah was a project manager whose team consistently missed deadlines. Every week, she had a different excuse. John didn't get me the data on time. Marketing changed the requirements last minute. The client keeps moving the goalposts. Then Sarah discovered extreme ownership. Instead of making excuses, she started asking different questions. What could I have done differently? How can I better communicate expectations? What systems can I put in place to prevent these issues? She started having clearer conversations with stakeholders up front. She built buffer time into her project schedules. She created better tracking systems. Guess what happened? Her team started hitting their deadlines. Or take Marcus, a small business owner whose sales were declining. His first instinct was to blame the market, his competitors, his sales team. But then he applied extreme ownership. He looked at his own leadership, his own systems, his own processes. He realized he hadn't been giving his team clear enough direction or proper training. He fixed those things and sales turned around. Here's the beautiful paradox of extreme ownership. The more responsibility you take, the more respect you earn. When Jocko took ownership of that friendly fire incident, he didn't lose credibility, he gained it. His superiors, his peers, and his subordinates all respected him more, not less. Why? Because they knew he was the kind of leader who would always have their backs, who wouldn't throw them under the bus when things went wrong. This applies to every relationship in your life. When you mess up with your spouse and take complete ownership instead of making excuses, your relationship gets stronger. When you take ownership of a mistake at work instead of deflecting, your boss trusts you more. When you take ownership of your team's failures, your team members will follow you anywhere. But extreme ownership isn't just about taking blame when things go wrong. It's about taking responsibility for everything in your sphere of influence, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If your employee isn't performing well, don't just blame them for being lazy or incompetent. Take ownership. How did I fail to properly train them? How did I fail to set clear expectations? How did I fail to provide proper support? If your teenager is making bad choices, don't just blame their friends or society. Take ownership. What kind of example am I setting? How am I communicating with them? What am I doing to build trust and influence? Coming up next, we'll dive into how to build the kind of trust that makes people want to follow your lead, even when the mission seems impossible. But first, I want you to think about one area of your life where you've been making excuses instead of taking ownership. Just one area. Hold on to that thought. Chapter 2. Building bulletproof trust. Trust isn't just nice to have in leadership, it's everything. And there's no better example of trust under pressure than what happened during one of Task Unit Bruiser's most dangerous missions. Jocko and his team were tasked with clearing a building known to be full of insurgents. Intel suggested there could be 20 or more enemy fighters inside, heavily armed and ready for a fight. As they approached the target, Leif Babin was leading the assault team while Jocko coordinated from Overwatch. But here's the thing about combat. Plans never survive contact with the enemy. As soon as they breached the building, everything went sideways. The layout was different than expected. Enemy positions weren't where Intel said they'd be. Communications were breaking down. In that moment of chaos, something remarkable happened. Without detailed instructions from Jocko, Leif made split-second decisions that potentially saved lives. He adjusted the assault plan on the fly. He repositioned his men. He called for support when needed. He trusted his training, and more importantly, Jocko trusted him to make those decisions. The mission was a success, with no friendly casualties and multiple high-value targets captured. But the real victory wasn't tactical. It was the trust between leaders that allowed them to adapt and overcome in the face of uncertainty. This is what Jocko and Leif call trust and verify, but with a twist. Most people have heard the phrase, trust but verify, which implies you trust someone but check up on them anyway. That's not really trust, that's monitoring. True leadership trust is different. It's trust and verify, meaning you trust your people completely to make good decisions within their area of responsibility, and you verify that they have everything they need to succeed. Let me show you how this works in the business world. Jennifer was a CEO who was struggling with delegation. She wanted to trust her team, but every time she gave someone a project, she found herself constantly checking in, asking for updates, basically micromanaging. Her team felt suffocated, and she felt overwhelmed. Then she learned about trust and verify. Instead of constantly checking up on people, she started doing something different. She made sure they had everything they needed up front. Clear objectives, proper resources, decision-making authority, and agreed-upon check-in points. She would sit down with each team member and say something like, "Here's the objective. Here's what success looks like. Here are the resources you have available. Here are the decisions you're authorized to make without asking me. Here's when we'll check in to see how it's going. Do you have everything you need?" Then she would step back and let them work. The result? Her team started performing at levels she never thought possible, and she finally had the bandwidth to focus on strategic leadership instead of tactical management. But trust isn't just about delegation. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to tell you the truth, especially when that truth is uncomfortable. In the military, they call this leading up the chain of command. It means having the courage to speak truth to power, to tell your superior officer when you think they're making a mistake, to provide feedback that might be hard to hear. Jocko and Leif learned that the best leaders don't just tolerate this kind of feedback, they demand it. They create a culture where people are expected to speak up when they see problems, where challenging ideas is not just allowed but required. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. First, be explicit about wanting feedback. Don't just say, "Let me know if you have any concerns." Say something specific like, "I want you to challenge my decisions if you think I'm wrong. I want you to tell me about problems before they become crises. I want your honest opinion, even if you think I won't like it." Second, reward the behavior you want to see. When someone brings you bad news or challenges your decision, thank them publicly. Make it clear that this is exactly what you want people to do. Third, never shoot the messenger. If someone brings you a problem, resist the urge to get defensive or blame them for the problem. Instead, focus on solving it together. I know a manager named David who transformed his team using this approach. His team had been hiding problems from him because they were afraid of his reaction. Projects were failing, deadlines were being missed, but by the time David found out, it was too late to fix anything. David realized he had created a culture of fear, so he changed his approach. He started every team meeting by asking, "What problems are we facing that I need to know about?" He celebrated people who brought him issues early. He showed them that he valued honesty over good news. Within 3 months, his team's performance improved dramatically. Not because they stopped having problems, but because they started solving problems early instead of hiding them until they became crises. Trust is also about consistency, doing what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it, how you said you'd do it. In combat, your teammates' lives depend on you being exactly where you said you'd be, exactly when you said you'd be there. There's no room for "sorry, I'm running a few minutes late," when people are counting on you for covering fire. The same principle applies to civilian leadership. If you tell your team you'll get back to them by Friday, get back to them by Friday. If you promise to provide resources, provide the resources. If you say you'll attend their presentation, be at their presentation. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you make a deposit in the trust bank. Every time you don't, you make a withdrawal. And just like a real bank account, if you make too many withdrawals without enough deposits, you'll go broke. Coming up next, we'll talk about one of the biggest challenges every leader faces: how to prioritize when everything seems urgent and important. But here's something to think about right now. What's one specific action you could take this week to make a deposit in someone's trust account? Chapter 3. Prioritize and execute. Picture this scenario. You're a Navy SEAL team leader, and suddenly everything goes wrong at once. Enemy contact from multiple directions. One of your guys is wounded. Your communications are down. You're running low on ammunition. Oh, and you've got multiple objectives to complete before dawn. Sound overwhelming? Welcome to what Jocko and Leif call multiple problems with catastrophic consequences. Here's what most people do when facing multiple urgent problems. They panic. They try to solve everything at once. They jump from crisis to crisis without any clear prioritization. And they end up solving nothing effectively. But elite military units have a different approach. It's called prioritize and execute. And it's the secret to staying calm and effective when everything around you is falling apart. The concept is deceptively simple. Identify the highest priority problem, focus all your resources on solving that one problem, then move to the next highest priority. But here's the crucial part: you have to fight the urge to multitask your way through crises. Let me tell you about a mission where this principle literally saved lives. Jocko's team was in the middle of a building clearance when they came under heavy fire from multiple positions. At the same time, they discovered that one of their planned escape routes was blocked, and their helicopter support was delayed due to weather. 3 critical problems all happening simultaneously. In that moment, Jocko didn't try to solve all 3 problems at once. He identified the most immediate threat, the enemy fire that was preventing his team from moving. Everything else had to wait. He focused his entire team's effort on neutralizing that immediate threat first. Once they had suppressed the enemy fire, then and only then did he address the next priority, finding an alternative escape route. The helicopter delay became priority 3, dealt with only after the first 2 problems were solved. Result? Mission accomplished. All team members returned safely. Now, you might be thinking, that's great for combat, but how does this apply to my daily life? Let me show you. Meet Lisa, a marketing director who was drowning in what felt like 1,000 urgent priorities. Her team was behind on 3 different campaigns. Her boss was demanding a budget review by end of week. 2 key employees had just given notice. A major client was threatening to leave. The new product launch was falling behind schedule. Lisa's first instinct was to try tackling everything simultaneously. She was jumping between meetings, sending frantic emails, staying late every night, but nothing was getting resolved. She was busy but not effective. Then Lisa applied prioritize and execute. She stepped back and asked herself, if I could only solve one of these problems today, which one would have the biggest impact on my team and my company? The answer was clear. The major client who was threatening to leave. That one client represented 30% of their revenue. Everything else was important, but nothing else was as critical. So Lisa did something that felt counterintuitive. She ignored everything else and focused entirely on that one client relationship. She cleared her calendar. She called the client personally. She went to their office. She listened to their concerns. She developed a solution. Took 2 full days, but she saved the account. Then, and only then, did she move to the next priority, addressing the staffing issue by having deep conversations with the employees who had given notice. One by one, she worked through each crisis with total focus. And you know what? She solved more problems in 1 week using this approach than she had in the previous month of frantic multitasking. But prioritize and execute isn't just about crisis management. It's a daily discipline for high performers. Here's how you can apply this principle starting today. Step 1. Make a list of everything on your plate. Don't edit yourself. Just brain dump everything you think you need to do. Step 2. Ask the hard question. What matters most? Not what's most urgent, not what's easiest, not what someone else thinks is important. What will have the biggest impact on your goals? Step 3. Choose one thing. I know it's tempting to choose 3 or 4 things, but resist that temptation. The power of this approach comes from singular focus. Step 4. Work on that one thing until it's either completed or you've made significant progress. Don't check email. Don't take phone calls. Don't get distracted by other urgent things that pop up. Step 5. Then, and only then, choose the next one thing. I know this sounds simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. Your brain will fight you on this. It will tell you that everything is equally important. It will insist that you need to multitask. It will create a sense of urgency around things that aren't actually urgent. But here's what Jocko learned in combat and in business. The person who can maintain focus under pressure wins. Let me share one more example. Tom was a small business owner who was struggling to grow his company. He had a list of 20 different strategies he wanted to implement: improve his website, launch social media campaigns, attend networking events, develop new products, improve customer service, hire more staff, upgrade his technology, and on and on. For 2 years, Tom dabbled in all of these areas without making significant progress in any of them. His business was stuck. Then Tom applied prioritize and execute. He looked at his business objectively and asked, "What's the one thing that would have the biggest impact on my revenue?" The answer was clear. He needed to fix his customer retention problem. He was spending a fortune acquiring new customers, but they weren't staying loyal or making repeat purchases. So Tom ignored everything else on his list and focused entirely on customer retention for 3 months. He analyzed why customers were leaving. He improved his follow-up systems. He developed a customer loyalty program. He personally called his top customers to get feedback. The result? Customer retention improved by 40%, which had a massive impact on his bottom line. More importantly, he proved to himself that focused effort trumps scattered effort every single time. Here's what's coming up next. We'll dive into the planning process that Navy SEALs use to execute complex missions, and how you can use the same framework to achieve your goals with military precision. But before we move on, I want you to think about this. What's the one thing that, if you focused on it completely for the next 30 days, would have the biggest positive impact on your life or career? Hold that thought. Chapter 4. Planning like a strategist. Every successful Navy SEAL mission starts with a plan. Not just any plan, a bulletproof, detailed, contingency-rich plan that accounts for everything that could possibly go wrong. But here's what separates amateur planners from elite operators. Great plans are simple plans. Jocko learned this lesson the hard way during a mission planning session early in his deployment. He and his team had developed what they thought was a brilliant, sophisticated operation to capture a high-value target. The plan had multiple moving parts, complex timing, intricate coordination between different units. On paper, it looked impressive. In reality, it was a disaster waiting to happen. About halfway through the briefing, one of his senior enlisted men raised his hand and said, "Sir, I've been in the Navy for 15 years, and I don't understand this plan. If I don't understand it, how is a 19-year-old kid supposed to execute it under fire?" That was Jocko's wake-up call. He realized that complexity is the enemy of execution. When bullets are flying and adrenaline is pumping, people can only remember and execute simple, clear instructions. So they redesigned the plan. They stripped away all the fancy complexity and focused on the essentials. Who does what, when, and why. The result was a plan that everyone could understand, remember, and execute perfectly. This principle applies to every area of your life. The best plans are the ones that are so simple you can't mess them up. Let me show you how this works in the business world. Marcus was planning to launch a new product line for his company. His initial plan was incredibly detailed. A 47-page document with complex timelines, multiple dependencies, and dozens of decision points. 3 months in, the project was behind schedule, over budget, and his team was confused about priorities. They were spending more time managing the plan than executing it. That's when Marcus discovered the Navy SEAL planning process. He threw out his 47-page plan and replaced it with something much simpler. Objective: launch the new product line by Q4. Key milestones: product design complete, manufacturing partner selected, marketing campaign launched, sales team trained. Success criteria: $500,000 in pre-orders before launch. Contingency plans: if manufacturing is delayed, we have backup suppliers. If pre-orders are low, we have Plan B marketing tactics. That was it. 1 page. Simple enough that everyone on the team could understand it and remember it. The result? They launched on time, under budget, and exceeded their sales targets. But effective planning isn't just about simplicity. It's about what Jocko calls leading down the chain of command. This means involving your team in the planning process, making sure they understand not just what they need to do, but why they need to do it. Here's the framework that Navy SEALs use for every mission briefing. 1. The mission. What are we trying to accomplish? 2. The situation. What's the current reality we're dealing with? 3. The execution. Who does what, when, and how? 4. The contingencies. What if things don't go according to plan? 5. The commander's intent. What's the overall goal? And what should people do if they can't reach me for guidance? Let me show you how Sarah, a project manager, applied this framework to turn around a failing project. Her team was 3 weeks behind on a critical client deliverable, morale was low, and communication was breaking down. Instead of just pushing everyone to work harder, Sarah called a meeting and used the SEAL planning framework. Mission. We're going to deliver the client presentation on time and exceed their expectations. Situation. We're behind schedule because we underestimated the complexity of the data analysis. The client is getting nervous, and we're all feeling stressed. Execution. Here's exactly who's responsible for what, and here are our daily check-in times. Here's how we're going to reorganize our work to catch up. Contingencies. If we hit any roadblocks, here's our escalation process. If we can't make the original deadline, here's our backup plan for managing client expectations. Commander's intent. Our goal is to maintain this client relationship and prove we can deliver quality work under pressure. If you're ever unsure about a decision, ask yourself, what would best serve the client and protect our reputation? The transformation was immediate. Everyone knew exactly what they needed to do and why it mattered. The project was completed on time, the client was thrilled, and the team felt proud of their work. But here's the most important part of Navy SEAL planning. Plans are worthless, but planning is invaluable. What does that mean? It means that your plan will probably change as soon as you start executing it. But the process of planning, thinking through objectives, anticipating problems, considering alternatives, that's what prepares you to adapt when reality doesn't match your expectations. Think about it like this. When Navy SEALs plan a mission, they don't just plan for what they expect to happen. They plan for what might happen. They ask what-if questions constantly. What if our primary route is blocked? What if our communications go down? What if we encounter more enemy resistance than expected? What if the weather changes? What if our helicopter extraction is delayed? This kind of contingency planning isn't pessimistic. It's realistic. And it's what separates successful people from those who get derailed by the first obstacle they encounter. Here's how you can apply this to your own goal setting and planning. Step 1. Define your objective clearly. Not what you want to try to do, but what you will accomplish. Step 2. Identify the 3 to 5 most critical actions required to achieve that objective. Step 3. For each critical action, ask, what could prevent this from happening? Then develop contingency plans for those scenarios. Step 4. Share your plan with the people who need to help you execute it. Make sure they understand not just their role, but the overall objective. Step 5. Plan your check-in points. How will you measure progress and adjust if needed? I worked with an entrepreneur named Jennifer who was launching her first online course. Instead of just hoping everything would work out, she applied this planning framework. Objective: launch course with 100 paying students by end of month. Critical actions: complete course content, set up payment system, create marketing campaign, recruit affiliate partners, plan launch sequence. Contingencies: if technology fails, here's my backup platform. If marketing response is low, here's my plan B promotion strategy. If affiliate partners don't deliver, here's how I'll drive traffic myself. Result: she launched with 127 students and went on to build a 6-figure online education business. Coming up next, we'll tackle one of the most challenging aspects of leadership: how to lead up the chain of command and manage your boss just as effectively as you manage your team. Chapter 5. Leading up and down. Here's something most leadership books won't tell you. You can't effectively lead down if you can't lead up. What does that mean? It means that if you can't influence your boss, you can't truly serve your team. And this is where most managers fail. They focus all their energy on managing down while ignoring the critical relationship above them. Jocko learned this lesson during one of the most challenging periods of his deployment. His SEAL team was operating in Ramadi under the command of an army battalion that had a very different approach to operations than what the SEALs were used to. The army commander was risk-averse. He wanted detailed approval for every mission. He insisted on extensive coordination that slowed down SEAL operations. From the SEALs' perspective, this bureaucratic approach was hampering their effectiveness. Jocko had a choice. He could complain about his boss to his team, creating an us versus them mentality. He could go around his commander and appeal to higher authority. Or he could do something much more difficult but ultimately more effective. He could lead up the chain of command. Leading up means taking ownership of the relationship with your superior. It means understanding their priorities, constraints, and pressures. It means presenting solutions, not problems. It means making your boss's job easier, not harder. So instead of complaining about the army commander's risk-averse approach, Jocko worked to understand it. He learned about the political pressures the commander was facing. He understood the constraints imposed from above. He recognized that the commander wasn't being difficult for the sake of being difficult. He was trying to accomplish his mission while managing risks that Jocko might not have fully appreciated. Armed with this understanding, Jocko changed his approach. Instead of pushing for approval for risky operations, he started presenting options that addressed the commander's concerns while still achieving SEAL objectives. He provided more detailed planning. He offered more comprehensive risk mitigation strategies. He demonstrated how SEAL operations actually supported the Army's overall mission. The result? The Army commander became one of the SEALs' biggest supporters, giving them more operational freedom than they'd ever had before. This is leading up. Taking responsibility for the success of your superior, not just yourself. Let me show you how this works in the corporate world. David was a talented marketing manager who was constantly frustrated with his boss, the VP of sales. The VP was always changing priorities, asking for last-minute reports, and seemed to have unrealistic expectations about what the marketing team could accomplish. David's initial response was typical. He complained to his team about their impossible boss. He blamed the VP for the team's stress and missed deadlines. He created an adversarial relationship that was toxic for everyone. Then David learned about leading up the chain of command. He realized that instead of fighting his boss, he needed to understand him. David started paying attention to what pressures his VP was facing. He learned that the VP was under intense scrutiny from the CEO to improve sales numbers. He discovered that the VP was dealing with a demanding board of directors who wanted detailed reports on marketing ROI. He realized that the VP's unrealistic expectations were actually just passed down pressure from above. With this new understanding, David completely changed his approach. Instead of waiting for his boss to ask for reports, he proactively provided updates on marketing metrics that he knew the VP needed for his own boss. Instead of complaining when priorities changed, he presented options and recommendations for how to handle the new priorities while maintaining existing commitments. Most importantly, David started having regular one-on-one meetings with his VP to understand upcoming challenges and priorities. He made it his job to anticipate what his boss needed and provide it before being asked. The transformation was remarkable. The VP started trusting David with bigger responsibilities. The team's stress levels decreased because they were no longer blindsided by last-minute changes. David got promoted within 6 months. But leading up isn't just about managing your boss. It's about taking ownership of communication and alignment throughout the organization. Here are the key principles of leading up the chain of command. Principle 1. Understand their world. What pressures is your boss facing? What metrics do they care about? What keeps them awake at night? You can't influence someone effectively if you don't understand their perspective. Principle 2. Bring solutions, not problems. Anyone can identify problems. Leaders bring solutions. When you have to escalate an issue to your boss, come with at least 2 potential solutions and your recommendation. Principle 3. Make their job easier. Ask yourself, how can I help my boss be more successful? Then do those things without being asked. Principle 4. Communicate proactively. Don't wait for your boss to ask for updates. Provide regular, concise updates on progress, challenges, and plans. Principle 5. Align your priorities with theirs. If you want support for your initiatives, show how they support your boss's objectives. Now, let's talk about leading down the chain of command, but with a twist. Most people think leading down means giving orders and expecting compliance. But Jocko learned that true leadership is about creating other leaders, not followers. Here's how he did it: decentralized command. Instead of making every decision himself, Jocko pushed decision-making authority down to the lowest possible level. He gave his team leaders the authority to make tactical decisions without asking permission. But, and this is crucial, he made sure they understood the overall mission and commander's intent. This meant that when communications broke down or unexpected situations arose, his team could continue to operate effectively without waiting for instructions. Each leader understood the bigger picture and could make decisions that supported the overall mission. Let me show you how this works in business. Lisa was a regional manager overseeing 5 retail locations. Her traditional approach was to make most of the important decisions herself and communicate them down to her store managers. This created a bottleneck. Everything had to go through Lisa, and her store managers became order takers rather than problem solvers. Then Lisa implemented decentralized command. She clearly communicated the company's objectives and values to her store managers. She established clear boundaries, what decisions they were authorized to make and what needed to be escalated. Then she stepped back and let them run their stores. The results were immediate. Customer satisfaction improved because store managers could resolve issues on the spot instead of saying, "Let me check with my boss." Sales increased because managers could adapt quickly to local market conditions. And Lisa finally had time to focus on strategic initiatives instead of tactical decisions. But decentralized command only works with extreme ownership. You have to trust your people, but you also have to verify that they have everything they need to succeed. Coming up in our final chapter, we'll tie everything together and talk about how to create a culture of ownership that transforms not just your leadership, but your entire organization. But first, think about this. Who is one person above you that you could start leading more effectively? And who is one person below you that you could empower with more decision-making authority? Chapter 6. Creating a Culture of Ownership. After returning from Iraq, Jocko and Leif faced their biggest challenge yet: translating combat-tested leadership principles into the corporate world. Could the same mindset that made Navy SEALs successful in the most dangerous places on Earth actually work in boardrooms and office buildings? Their first client was a struggling oil company. The leadership team was fractured. Different departments were blaming each other for missed targets and failed projects. Morale was low, and performance was even lower. Sound familiar? This is the reality in most organizations, a culture of blame, finger-pointing, and excuse-making. But within 6 months of implementing extreme ownership principles, this company transformed. Departments started collaborating instead of competing. Leaders stopped making excuses and started making solutions. Performance improved across every metric. How did they do it? They didn't just teach people about extreme ownership. They created a culture where extreme ownership was expected, rewarded, and modeled from the top down. Here's how you can do the same thing, whether you're leading a team of 5 or a company of 5,000. Step 1. Model the behavior you want to see. Culture isn't created by what you say. It's created by what you do, especially when you think no one is watching. If you want your team to take ownership, you have to take ownership first. If you want them to stop making excuses, you have to stop making excuses first. If you want them to focus on solutions instead of problems, you have to demonstrate that behavior consistently. Remember Sarah from our earlier example, the project manager whose team was missing deadlines? When she started taking extreme ownership, she didn't just change her own behavior. She modeled the behavior she wanted from her team. When a project ran into problems, instead of asking, "Who's responsible for this delay?" she started asking, "What can we learn from this? How can we prevent it from happening again?" Instead of pointing fingers when something went wrong, she would say, "I should have anticipated this. Here's how I'm going to handle it differently next time." Her team noticed. They started adopting the same language and the same mindset. Within a few months, the entire team was taking ownership instead of making excuses. Step 2. Reward ownership, not just results. Most organizations accidentally punish extreme ownership. They reward people who look good even when their teams perform poorly, and they punish people who take responsibility for failures even when they're working to fix them. You have to flip this script. When someone on your team takes ownership of a mistake and presents a plan to fix it, celebrate that behavior publicly. When someone brings you a problem along with a solution, recognize that as exactly what you want people to do. David, the marketing manager who learned to lead up the chain of command, eventually became a director and started building his own team. He implemented what he called ownership awards, monthly recognition for team members who demonstrated extreme ownership, even when things didn't go perfectly. One month, he gave the award to a team member who had made a significant error in a campaign but had immediately taken ownership, stayed late to fix the problem, and implemented systems to prevent it from happening again. The message to the team was clear. We value people who take ownership and solve problems more than people who never make mistakes. Step 3. Create systems that support ownership. Culture isn't just about mindset, it's about systems. You need to create structures that make it easy for people to take ownership and hard for them to pass the buck. This means clear accountability structures where everyone knows exactly what they're responsible for. It means regular check-ins that focus on progress and problems, not just status updates. It means decision-making processes that push authority down to the appropriate level. Jennifer, the CEO who struggled with delegation, eventually created what she called ownership maps for every major project. These documents clearly outlined who was responsible for what decisions each person was authorized to make, and what the escalation process was for issues that needed higher-level input. The result was that people stopped coming to her with every little problem because they knew exactly what they were empowered to handle themselves. Step 4. Make ownership part of your hiring and promotion criteria. You can't create a culture of ownership if you keep hiring and promoting people who don't demonstrate ownership behaviors. Start asking different interview questions. Tell me about a time when something went wrong and it was your fault. What did you learn? Describe a situation where you took responsibility for something that wasn't technically your job. How do you handle it when you make a mistake? Listen for people who take ownership in their stories versus people who deflect blame. Promote people who demonstrate extreme ownership, not just people who deliver results. Marcus, the small business owner who focused on customer retention, eventually grew his company to 50 employees. As he hired new people, he made extreme ownership one of his core hiring criteria. He found that people who demonstrated ownership in small things would demonstrate ownership in big things too. Step 5. Have the courage to address ownership failures. Creating a culture of ownership requires you to have difficult conversations with people who consistently make excuses or blame others for their failures. This doesn't mean being harsh or punitive. It means being clear about expectations and holding people accountable to those expectations. When someone comes to you with excuses instead of solutions, redirect them. I understand there were challenges. What I need to know is, what are you going to do about it? When someone tries to blame others for their failures, ask them, what could you have done differently? The beautiful thing about creating a culture of ownership is that it becomes self-reinforcing. Once people experience the power and freedom that comes with taking complete responsibility for their areas, they don't want to go back to being victims of circumstances. They start seeing obstacles as challenges to overcome rather than excuses for failure. They start looking for solutions instead of people to blame. They start taking pride in their ability to handle whatever comes their way. And here's the ultimate result. You create an organization full of leaders, not followers. When everyone takes extreme ownership, you don't need complex management structures and layers of approval. You don't need constant oversight and micromanagement. You have a team of people who can think strategically, act decisively, and adapt quickly to changing circumstances. This is what Jocko and Leif discovered. Extreme ownership isn't just a leadership technique. It's a way of life that transforms everything it touches. We've covered a lot of ground together in the past hour, but let me leave you with the most important truth about extreme ownership. It's not just about becoming a better leader, it's about becoming a better human being. When you take complete responsibility for your life, your relationships, your career, and your impact on others, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your destiny. You've learned that extreme ownership gives you extreme control. You've discovered how to build bulletproof trust by trusting and verifying. You understand how to maintain focus under pressure by prioritizing and executing. You know how to plan like a strategist while staying flexible enough to adapt. And you've seen how to lead both up and down the chain of command while creating a culture where ownership thrives. But here's the thing about all this knowledge. It's worthless unless you apply it. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one area of your life where you've been making excuses instead of taking ownership. Just one. Maybe it's a relationship that's struggling. Maybe it's a goal you haven't achieved. Maybe it's a team that's not performing. Whatever it is, I want you to ask yourself the question that changed everything for Jocko. How is this my fault? And what am I going to do about it? Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait for other people to change first. Start taking extreme ownership today, right now, in this moment. Because here's what I know about you. You didn't listen to this entire audiobook by accident. You're here because you want to be better. You want to lead better. You want to live better. You have that spark inside you that separates leaders from followers and champions from everyone else. The question is, what are you going to do about it? If this content has added value to your life, I'd be honored if you'd like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your support helps me continue creating content that can transform lives. And here's what's coming next week. We're diving deep into The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** by Mark Manson. Another game-changing book that will completely shift how you think about success, happiness, and what really matters in life. Until then, remember, you are exactly where you are because of the choices you've made and the ownership you've taken, which means you have complete power to change where you're going. The mission starts now. Take ownership. Take control. Take your life to the next level. This has been your host, and I'll see you in the next audiobook breakdown. Now go out there and lead like your life depends on it, because it does.